an immigrant family. I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
When a pontiff has come to American shores in the past, it's always been a time of celebration and love. It remains so for the most part as Pope Francis kicks into his tour, but there are underpinnings of political discourse, with plenty of Republicans and conservative Christians railing against His Holiness. The Pope did nothing to back off his side of the controversy in remarks to the President and the nation on Wednesday. And what should be a glorious moment has turned in some ways more than a little ugly. Let's get started with the Senior Fellow for Legal Studies at the Family Research Council, former Chief Counsel to the Constitution Subcommittee in the House. Welcome, Cathy Ruse, to the Hardline. Joined by nationally syndicated columnist for the National Catholic Register and editor-at-large for National Review Online, Kathryn Jean Lopez. Ladies, I want to thank you both for joining us. And Cathy, I'm going to begin with you first on this. The Pope knew very well that he was walking into a bear trap here to start talking about political issues. But as I said, this is a Pope who seems to enjoy it. But does he really think he's going to make any change because he's seeming to anger more Catholics than make them happy?
I don't know. I don't think he's seeking to anger Catholics. I have to disagree with that premise. And there are plenty of other things he said already today that would anger potentially Catholics on the left side of the political spectrum, and I hope we'll get to that too. But, you know, sure, I think we all expected to hear something about climate change from Pope Francis, and we certainly did at the White House. You know, nothing he said on immigration. You know, in particular, you have to look very carefully at his words. Certainly he didn't frame it in terms of illegal immigration. And, you know, we are a country that welcomes immigrants. And, you know, people on the right, left, and center embrace the notion of legal immigration. So, you know, it depends on what's going to happen to the spin, and that's always the problem with this.
Okay, there's the point, and there's the spin. So let me turn to you, Kathryn, and talk about this, because, as I mentioned, the Pope is saying things that is not sitting well with a lot of conservative Catholics here. But let me play the other side of this coin. Should they all just back off a little bit and think that, well, maybe we do need some help in climate change. Maybe we do need to soften up a little in immigration. Maybe we do need to take down the anger a little bit. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think we could all afford to take this as a moment to listen and maybe consider a little examination of conscience. Father Jorge or Pope Francis is a good Jesuit, and so much of what he does, I sometimes call him a Jesuit spiritual director for the world. So much of what he does is walk people through the Ignatian spiritual exercises, which at their base is trying to get you to look at what you're doing, what your motivations are doing, and what God's trying to do in your daily life. And so much of what he says, I try to read his morning homilies every day. They challenge me in political ways, in the sense that everything you do has to be authentically Catholic. So if you're engaged in the public square, and he says we all need to be, in some degree, we all have to be civically involved. That's part of our responsibility. Well, are we taking Catholic social teaching seriously? Are we considering what God's calling us to do in various things? I think this is a great moment for an examination of conscience.
Okay.
for everyone, whatever their politics.
Let's examine something here. We mentioned this. The Pope has not been shy about addressing things like climate change. So here's what he said today.
Accepting the urgency, it seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
Cathy, let's get to it in the words of Thomas Sowell, the author who only today said that this is a larger trend of the rise of the political left among Catholic intellectuals. This Pope is, in a sense, the culmination of that trend, and the left now has a Pope. How would you react to that statement?
Well, this Pope is not changing church doctrine on anything. You know, if Pope Francis wants to come and emphasize some matter of common social concern, you know, that's one thing. But this Pope isn't changing any church doctrine. He's not creating a new, you know, there's no new mortal sin in failing to...
Well, it's fair to say, yet perhaps he's not changing anything, but isn't it fair to say that things can change? We do have to look at that possibility, yes?
Well, I believe that the Holy Spirit is going to watch over this church as it's done for over 2,000 years, and that we're not going to see any sort of what I would consider doctrinal error. So it's an emphasis of social concern, but there are other emphases, and I just have to say his first matter of concern in addressing the bishops a little bit later today was, he said, the innocent victim of abortion. And that was his first in the list of people that we as Catholics in America have to show unity for and solidarity with. And I was awfully glad to hear that.
So, Kathryn, I have about a minute left here. Let me just get to you again when it comes down to that anger. I know I mentioned it a couple of times here, but how would you then respond to those far right, the conservative Catholics, who say that this is a pope speaking for the president, speaking for politics, speaking for the left, and he needs to shut it down?
Well, I'm sorry, but if the takeaway from the White House remarks today is that conservatives oppose the Holy Father because they want dirty air, I don't think that's where the conservative movement needs to be. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and I don't think that's what conservatives are saying, I certainly hope that's the case, not the case. I think that the Holy Father is telling us to be good stewards of creation. And oh, by the way, when he writes an encyclical on creation, he's talking about all of creation, including human life, including marriage. And it's that full vision that, frankly, I think might get us somewhere in our politics. So I would urge my fellow conservatives to take this as an opportunity, because I actually think if we took the Holy Father's lead and not dismiss some of the things that he's saying, we actually might get somewhere in domestic politics.
Kathryn Jean Lopez, Cathy Ruse, ladies, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. You want to learn more about Pope Francis and his rise to the Vatican? Francis, A Pope for Our Time is the book, and you can get your copy in a special offer right here. Go to newsmax.com/Pope or call 800-203-7047. The Hardline continues.